there is a bit of a pattern emerging in the way I choose beer styles to do, so I'm going to see how long I can keep it up. So far we've done German, American, British, Belgian, and back to German. So I'm going to do another American style today, and probably a British style next time, and so on. I'll do that until it becomes inconvenient, or until I get bored and start talking about competitive dog grooming instead. So today it's an American style. It's not the most sexy style out there, but it is the most popular. Today we're doing American Light Lagers. Do try to hold all applause until the end of the show, please. Listen, it's a much maligned style, American Light Lager, and honestly, I'm not here to defend it. It doesn't seem to need my help anyway. Of the best-selling beers in the US in 2018, 6 of the top 10 beers were American Light Lagers. 3 of the top 4 are ALLs, as I'm going to call them, with Bud Heavy being the other one. It is a stupidly popular style. Stupid because there's not really anything to these beers. They are watery, flavorless offerings. People who drink them predominantly prefer to do so at near freezing temperatures to be sure that they don't impart any flavor whatsoever. So why bother? Also, Bud Heavy is just a derisive name for Budweiser. I think the appeal of the American Light Lager lies in its inoffensiveness. It is, as I said, largely without flavor. It is a refreshing cold beverage with some nice carbonation and a moderately low alcohol content. It's nothing to get too worked up about. It's like water that tastes a little off and may give you a slight buzz if you drink enough of it quickly. So, anyone can drink it. Few people will actually get much enjoyment out of the act of doing so, but literally anyone can drink it and not be put off by it all that much. The appeal is in the blandness of it. It's like network television in beer form. It's the Wheel of Fortune of beer. That all may make it sound like I'm taking the piss out of American Light Lagers. Like I don't think they're worth talking about. Anyway, the BJCP has this listed as their very first beer style. It is style 1A. It's almost like they wanted to get it out of the way and move on to more interesting things. Their overall impression of the style goes a little something like this. Highly carbonated, very light-bodied, nearly flavorless lager designed to be consumed very cold, very refreshing, and thirst-quenching. That's it. Short and sweet. At this rate, this is going to be a 10-minute episode. Don't worry, I'll have a lot of ranting to do when we get to the beer and movie pairing. It's going to get stupid. The key to doing a proper beer tasting on an ALL is to drink it at normal beer temperature. Don't wait for your Coors Light can to change color. Drink it when it's around 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I'm going to warn you, it's not going to taste the same when you drink it this way. At that temperature, you're going to be able to taste it, so be prepared for that. Even with a warmer ALL, you still won't get a ton of aroma. There won't be any bready malt smell, no bright citrus from the hops, no yeasty spice. You may perceive a tinge of grainy malt, or a slight floral hop character, maybe even a light apple fruitiness from the yeast. But all of these characteristics will be faint at best. A bit of DMS may also be present, and is not considered a fault with this style. So, I don't know how much I've really talked about off flavors in beer. I don't think it was much. I'll just dip my toe in and discuss the main ones. The most common off flavors are acetaldehyde, DMS, light struck, diacetyl, or diacetyl, depending on your preference there, infection, and oxidation. There are tons of other off flavors that run the gamut of flavors, from sickly sweet to cat piss to moldy cheese, but these 6 are the main ones to look out for. Acetaldehyde is probably the least offensive of these off flavors. It imparts a flavor similar to green apples. It is present in all beers, but it becomes a problem when it overtakes the beer's flavor profile. You can taste a bit of acetaldehyde in a Bud Heavy. Then there's DMS, short for dimethyl sulfide. This off flavor presents like cooked corn or cooked vegetables in general. Low levels are common in some pale lagers and cream ales. Rolling Rock, for example, has some very noticeable DMS in it. This is the one that's allowed in an American Light Lager. Light Struck is a pretty common off flavor in a lot of imported beers. It's that skunky, sulfury smell that occurs when beer comes into contact with too much sunlight. A lot of people think that Heineken is supposed to taste like that, but if you drink a Heineken out of a can, it's a completely different flavor profile. It's not really skunky at all. Diacetyl causes a buttery, oily sensation. It can come off tasting like that fake butter they put on your popcorn at the movies. It is appropriate in a couple of styles. Pilsner Urquell, the original Pilsner, has a bit of detectable diacetyl in it. Then we have Infection. This one is more tricky than the others, as there are lots of ways a beer can become infected. Some infections cause other off flavors like diacetyl or a metallic taste, but more commonly, infection means lactic acid or acetic acid. It makes your beer taste like vinegar or sour milk. Now, sometimes this is intentional. A Goose or a Goza or a Berliner Weiss, to name but a few, are intentionally brewed with wild strains of yeast or lactobacillus bacteria to make the beer tart or sour, but in most styles this is an infection. Some of these sour beers are incredible though, and I strongly urge you to give them a try. And lastly we have Oxidation, also referred to as trans 2-nonanol. This off flavor is the papery, wet cardboard flavor that comes from letting a beer sit for too long. The more oxygen a beer comes in contact with, the faster oxidation occurs. This is rarely a good thing. Some barrel-aged stouts can benefit from a little oxidation, as it can impart some sherry-like flavors that add more complexity, but they are the exception here. For the most part, oxidation fucking sucks. So, those are your more common off flavors. I'm not going to get too in-depth on them, like what causes them and how to prevent them. I'll save that for another time. But just know that those are the main ones to look out for. Like I said, with American Light Lagers, a little DMS is not considered a fault. ALLs are also the beers where these off flavors are the most readily apparent. There's not a lot of flavor to mask your mistakes with ALLs. That makes this a tricky style for a home brewer. It's basic as fuck, but that doesn't mean it's easy. If you're experiencing deja vu right now, that's probably because you've said the exact same thing before in reference to your sister. Anyway, as far as appearance goes, ALLs are a very pale straw or pale yellow color. They have a frothy white head, but it doesn't tend to stick around for long, and these beers are very clear. They have what I guess you would call good balance. It's a fairly neutral taste. They have a crisp, dry finish and a faint grainy or corny flavor that may come across as sweet. ALLs can have a floral, spicy, or herbal hoppiness to them, but again, there are rarely enough hops to even detect. The hop bitterness is low to very low. From brand to brand, you can have a little variance from slightly malty to slightly bitter, but overall the balance is going to stay close to center. They will taste like lagers, thin, watery lagers, nothing more. The body of an ALL is very light and watery. The high carbonation levels can help to accentuate the crispness, and the dry finish. It will also give the beer a slight carbonic bite. That's that sensation you get when the carbon dioxide in the beer reacts in your mouth and turns into carbonic acid. It's a sharp tingle on your tongue, and it is enhanced by colder temperatures. So when you drink your ALL at the recommended temperature of too cold to taste, that carbonic bite is enhanced. It's purely a touch sensation, it's not a taste thing at all. These beers, these American Light Lagers, they were designed to appeal to as broad a range of people as possible. Any kind of strong flavor is a fault. They are meant to be bland and inoffensive. Miller Lite is often cited as the first light lager to emerge in the mid-70s. While it is the first successful American Light Lager, it is not the first. Originally, a biochemist named Dr. Joseph L. Awadis designed a way to isolate an enzyme capable of breaking down higher calorie starches. This allowed for a beer with fewer carbs and calories. The Brooklyn-based Rheingold Brewing Company released this beer as Gablinger's Diet Beer in 1967, and it failed miserably. Awadis was then allowed to share his recipe with a friend of his at Meisterbrau, a Chicago brewery. Released as Meisterbrau Light, it too was a horrible failure. When Meisterbrau went under in 1972, Miller bought the rights to 3 Meisterbrau recipes, one of which was the recipe for Meisterbrau Light. Miller reformulated the beer and called it simply Light, L-I-T-E. The big reason Miller's version succeeded where the others failed comes down to simple marketing. Like Miller's TV spots featured professional athletes and touted the beer as everything you want in a beer and less. That's some Don Draper shit right there. There's also the famous tagline of great taste, less filling. It's funny how a simple line like that can lead to so much revenue. Miller Lite was an absolute beast upon its release. It didn't take long for Anheuser-Busch to kick out their own light beer. No, not Bud Light. It was actually Natural Light, released in 1977. followed by Michelob Light in 1978. Bud Light didn't come around until 1982, and it didn't surpass Miller Lite in sales until 1997. Really, the only reason Bud Light eventually overtook Miller Lite is the same reason Miller Lite succeeded over its predecessors, marketing. AB spent insane amounts of money on Super Bowl ads in the mid-90s, and there's no doubt that it paid off. They had the Budweiser Frogs in 1995, the I Love You Man ads in 1996, one of which featured noted gun enthusiast and ape kisser Charlton Heston, and the Clydesdales playing football ad, also from 1996. If you're over 30, you most likely remember every one of those ads. Now describe to me a Miller Lite ad from the mid-90s. Any one of them. Go ahead, I'll wait. Nothing, right? AB was on top of their advertising game in the 90s, and that's how Bud Light became the best-selling beer in the US. And that's the main reason why American light lagers dominate the market. They are the most heavily advertised beers around. Flavor is irrelevant. It's all about the ads. Wasop, Real American Heroes, Spuds McKinsey, motherfucking Dilly Dilly. Who cares what your beer tastes like when you can spout nonsense like Dilly Dilly and have every idiot know what you're talking about and laugh along with you? So yeah, there's the history section of the American Light Lager. You'll notice I spent very little time talking about actual beer stuff. So let's try to get back to that now, shall we? As far as characteristic ingredients go, ALLs use either 2-row or 6-row barley with a high percentage of rice or corn as adjuncts. Some of these beers' mash bills are up to 40% rice or corn. These additional enzymes help to further lighten the beer's body and reduce the amount of carbs in it. If you're looking for a style to compare an ALL to, there's of course its big brother, the American Lager. This is essentially the same beer but with slightly more body, as well as more alcohol and more calories. ALLs are also close to a German Light beer, but with a less noticeable hop character and bitterness. Vital statistics. Now we're back on track. American Light Lager has an IBU range from 8 to 12, which is barely perceptible. It has an SRM range from 2 to 3, that's straw-colored, maybe pale yellow. And the ABV ranges from 2.8% all the way up to 4.2%. I don't really think I need to point out specific commercial examples. I think that's been sufficiently covered. But there are a few craft beers that would fall into this category. There's Sam Adams Light for sure. Yingling makes a light something or other. Beer Advocate lists Shiner Light Blonde in this category, as well as Yacht from Stillwater Artisan Ales. That's actually a decent enough beer if you can find it. Speaking of decent beer, let's check in with Thomas and see if he has some words of wisdom for people who are thinking about homebrewing a Bud Light clone for some reason. We'll take a quick break and then jump right into it. Stick around.